Welcome to the Ascent podcast, a show about inspiring people who explain their path to achievement. I'm your host, Joe Burgess, wealth advisor at Moxie Wealth Management. On today's episode, we talk with Keith Miller. Keith and his wife, Tricia, started a dog washing and grooming company called Bubbly Paws a few years ago in 2011. Both of them had started out in different careers. Keith was in radio broadcasting, and Tricia was a nutritionist. Of course, eventually they decided they wanted to do something different. Keith talks about that process of transitioning from broadcasting to starting a dog washing company. In addition, he talks about how he and Tricia try to position their service and experience to be different than other dog washing companies. Keith also shares the measured approach they take towards growth and franchising. And as you can imagine, when working with your spouse, there's some complexities on the work-life balance, and Keith tells us about that as well. And now, my interview with Keith Miller. Keith, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. This is exciting. I love this. This is just going to be fun.
Yeah, I think it'll be great. So I'm trying to get a handle on your career path and how things started. Where did you grow up?
I'm actually originally from right outside Chicago. It's Glenview, which most people have never heard of it until you realize, remember the Bartman that caught the Cubs baseball?
Yes.
That suburb.
He's from there.
He's from the suburb next door to it. And my brother actually used to be one of the police officers that would guard his house. So he would call me. He's like, hey, turn on Fox News, turn on CNN. I'm in the background. And literally for 3 weeks, that was his whole job. So that's where I grew up.
Oh, my God.
I'm also not a Cubs fan, so.
Well, that's got to be weird to be there and not be a Cubs fan, right? Isn't it like the law, like kind of being in Green Bay or something?
You know, it was actually super weird. Growing up, my mom worked for WGN Radio, which is who used to own the Cubs.
Right.
So all through high school, we always had free tickets to the games. And then I hit high school and I decided that, you know what, I'm going to rebel. I love the White Sox. And that was like a big thing in our family. When I actually made that switch, I still love the White Sox. They suck. But
Did they ever win back then?
No.
No. That's cool.
They tried. But, you know, it was one of those, I'm not going to be like the kid that acts out. I'm not going to be the kid that starts, doing drugs or drinking. I'm just going to switch teams.
Right. Got it. So where did you end up going to college?
Yeah, so after high school, I went to Drake University, which is in Des Moines.
Okay.
Went for journalism and mass communication. Super fun. Actually, a really cool small-town liberal arts college.
Yeah, I've driven through and around there. My daughter, who's a freshman in college now, we visited there this last year. But you like Drake.
You know, I love it. When I was looking at schools, I wanted a school that was far enough so that the parents aren't just going to hop in a car and show up.
Right.
But yet close enough that you could drive home for holidays. Mm-hmm. And that's what it was.
So when you got done with college, what was your first gig? What were you doing?
So my senior year of college, actually, I was working full-time at a radio station in Des Moines. The company I worked for, it was fun, but it was all fake radio. So the morning show was pre-recorded from L.A., the midday show came out of Cincinnati, nights came out of Tampa. And my job was, and it was all one day off.
Huh.
Well, this is good.
Yeah. How do they, yeah.
It's still happening, by the way. So then my job was, it was a staff of 3 at this station, by the way.
Okay.
I came in and I tightened up all of those segments for each one of the shows. It was very like, CHR, Poppy, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Ja Rule, stuff like that. And that was my job. It would take, 3 hours to do it, literally an entire day's worth of programming. And then I would record the overnight show. So that was my senior year.
Oh, you're still in school.
Oh, still in school. I would go in at 4 o'clock in the morning and do all this.
Huh.
And then go to school, come back and finish. And I'm like, you know what? In radio, the more you do behind the scenes or the more you work your way up, the better it's going to be. So my senior year was kind of just a blow-off here. And I would show up for the exams. And my philosophy was C gets the degree. So let's just say we did that.
That's right. Well, those people are kind of the people you can have a beer with, right?
Right. Oh, you know what? It was cool. So yeah, I did that. I worked in Des Moines full-time for a year after that.
Okay.
Then I moved to Cincinnati, and we pre-recorded shows for 15 cities every day.
So this is just
Isn't it great?
Right.
It's a total thing. The company now starts with an I and ends in a heart.
Okay,
so
got it.
You can figure out who it is, but every company does this now. So we were actually on the air fake live during 9/11, which was weird because none of us knew how to make the station live. So we had like big markets. We had Chicago, we had Cincinnati, we had Detroit. We had a bunch of these stations. And as like the planes were hitting everything, we're still on the air. Like, hey, did you see The Bachelorette last night? That was awesome. Like, oh, by the way, here's Ja Rule. Have a good day.
Because your Tuesday show is recorded Monday, right?
Exactly. So you're always talking about what you think you saw on TV the night before that you haven't watched yet. And then on the weekends, they would fly you to the different cities to do like, bar gigs or just remotes and pretend that you live there. It was it was so weird. Some of my good friends still do it. And you're almost living two lives.
Got it.
Out of college, great gig. You go around, do a lot of drinking and,
And did you I don't even know if I've ever been to Cincinnati. You like Cincinnati?
I loved it. At the time, Delta was based out of there. So, I mean, just like here, like you could hop a flight almost anywhere. Cool city. I actually lived in Kentucky. And, the Cincinnati airport's in Kentucky, which is also really weird. I landed for the job interview and they're like, welcome to the Cincinnati, Kentucky airport. I'm like, are we in the right spot? The first thing I did when I moved here, I got rid of the Kentucky license plates, the Kentucky driver's license. I'm like, I cannot look like I'm from Kentucky. So,
well, so we're doing this interview here in Minneapolis, and you now live in Minnesota. How did you find your way back here?
It was one of those things, I got tired of doing that type of traveling. It was great when you're 22, 23, going around the country doing this, but I wanted to settle down, and I took a job here for KS95, which is the Hubbard company.
Okay.
And the minute they offered me the job, I'm like, this is an awesome family. This is a great place to be. And I just really knew I wanted to take it. I also moved here in January when it was -20. So
that's amazing.
Oh, it was great.
Right. It's one of those, I live in Minnesota too and have most of my life. And it's a great community. And we always feel like the weather's just bad enough to keep a lot of people out.
Well, my favorite story of Hubbard was I was walking in. Like they have the employee entrance and, the whole Hubbard family, they have underground parking at the building, heated underground parking. I'm just walking in. There's a lady behind me. She's like, hey, Keith, welcome to Minneapolis. You liking it? I'm like, and I'm just swearing. I'm like, it's so effing cold here. I'm like, It was -20. I was not in a good mood.
Right.
To find out that was the owner's daughter who ran the whole radio division that I'm swearing at. I'm like, you brought me here, let alone... You also drive a Dodge minivan parking in like the common parking lot. I'm like, you know what? I love this place because you're just so down to earth, so normal. Here's what I have. I'm just one of the people. Like you would never know who they are, and it was just the coolest thing.
Right. So how long were you with Hubbard then?
I was with them for 6 years. So we launched their afternoon show, which was a lot of fun. And I did it for 6 years. And I mean, I have great friends and great family that are still there. So I have nothing but respect for that company.
So what hits you to kind of move away from corporate America and decide to maybe start doing your own business?
I think a lot of it's half myself, half my wife. We were just sitting at home. We lived in Roseville at the time, and it was one of those, what do we want to do next? She's a dietitian or a nutritionist. She was working for Health Partners. She hated like the whole corporate desk job thing. I saw where radio's going. It's XM. Or podcasts, like what you're doing. Like that's where I think the future is, or even YouTube. And Hubbard's a great company, but you're never moving up until somebody dies or quits, and neither ever happened. So you're basically locked into this role, and I'm like, I don't like 2 to 7 every day. I'm like, I just really hate this time, you know? And we just ended up looking at different things. I actually went home to Chicago, visited some friends who opened a doggy daycare. And I'm like, I texted Tricia from the airport. I'm like, doggy daycare. I'm like, what do you think? I'm like, this could be cool. We have a dog.
Right.
So then we opened a doggy daycare. Just like a year and a half later.
So what is that transition process? And what I mean by that is, do you both quit your job at the same time? Did one of you say, you pay the bills, I'm going to quit the job and get it going? Or how does that work?
It was weird because she hated her job. I liked my job. I just also saw that, hey, there has to be a time to get out. So the minute we signed the lease, she quit her job and just went into the daycare full time. And this is still, we're building things out. We're still doing stuff. I happened to time my departure 2 weeks before the state fair because I just didn't want to go to the state fair for 2 straight weeks and meet people. If you're from Minnesota, you totally get that.
For sure.
It's good for a day, but not 2 weeks of just fun.
Yes, got it. Yep.
So we kind of timed it right around there, and for the longest time, probably for 4 months, I was going to the doggy daycare at 6 in the morning until about 1 o'clock, and then going to the station from about 1:30 to 7. And it was good, but it was just killing you. But I didn't want to do it until we had something reliable. You know, you don't want two incomes on one small business.
Right. Is there any market research that you do? Is there, how do you determine, all right, we're going to do a doggy daycare and know that, hey, we'll have clients, we'll have people that come and use us, we'll make money. How do you determine
this
that?
is back in 2008 where doggy daycare wasn't a thing either. Like we went to some of the bigger banks and let's do a loan. Can we do something? Can we do an SBA loan? Yeah, we only do, brick and mortar retail, restaurants, stuff that fit their mold. Doggy daycare was not the mold. So we found a small town bank and it was everything a bank wasn't. Like they were friendly, helpful. We ended up signing up our dog for a checking account because one of the tellers had an account for their cat. I'm like, well, Roxy clearly needs an account. So she had like her little debit card with her picture on it.
That's funny.
It was cool. I mean, and that's really where it went from. There wasn't a ton of market research behind it. Just we knew there was a need, and I think they took a huge risk on us.
And how do you, how do you make people aware that you have a daycare? What kind of marketing are you doing?
That was the hardest thing because I'd never marketed a business. I could talk about how to use a Swiffer wet jet and do infomercials on it, but never actually market something. At the time, MySpace was big, which, by the way, I just logged onto my MySpace account. That's interesting.
It's those are still live.
There. Oh, yeah.
All right.
I'll send you the link. It's great. But we did a lot of Google AdWords with that one just because there really wasn't another social media platform to base things on. And we knew that online was the way to go. We did a couple print ads. We didn't really even do radio, which was weird.
It would seem like your sweet spot, right? Yeah.
But on the other hand, we did a lot with like the local TV stations. And even to this day, that's what we do a lot with because cameras love dogs. We did a thing when the NHL went on strike. Somehow we ended up in that story. How? I don't know. Because they just needed some fluff and we had dogs.
That's right. It's like babies or dogs or whatever else.
So I love like that organic type marketing, not just, hey, here's a commercial, listen to it. And that's even how we do things today.
So how long did it take until you were profitable in your daycare?
We were breaking even after about 6 months. Which is about the same time that I left. Because I'm like, okay, I just needed to see, the first day we opened the daycare, we had 2 dogs. Like, oh, this is great. Like 2 dogs, way to go. Like I thought there'd be 0.
Right.
And then each week it just kept getting a little busier, all the way up to about 115 dogs, which is what we capped out at.
Well, and I imagine when somebody signs on for the daycare, maybe like their children, it is for like a year, right? Or how long of a commitment do they have?
I would love to run it like a kid's daycare.
Yeah.
Let's say we're recording this now like the week of Christmas, right?
Yeah.
And I'm paying for our kids' daycare that's not even open.
Right.
I would love to do that model. We didn't. We just did 5, 10, 20-day packages. And we there were some daycares that had like the kids' daycare type model where you're paying for the whole year. We really just wanted to become accommodating. Because I don't like a lot of structure. I don't like a lot of rules. I like being very customer focused as opposed to saying, you have to drop off by 9 o'clock. Well, you know what? If it's 9:05, do you really care? Like, I just made your job 5 minutes easier.
Right. And like I was thinking like a health club where if you cancel, you got to pay for an extra 30 days or something like that. Yeah.
No, that's not us. Like we try to really go over the top with customer service. And that's, to this day, we still do that. And we really look for people that can do that, that want to do that.
So what's it like working with your wife? I've never met your wife. I've asked my wife, and she would never work with me.
You notice I'm just laughing,
yes, right?
In the beginning, it was tough because if you think about it, you're together all the time. So it's like if you and your wife have a job, you have your own individual jobs or whatever, you come home at 5 o'clock and you talk about what you did.
Right.
All we could do is talk about our staff because we were together all the time. And we really try so hard to have the workday end at 5 o'clock. And I think once we got that rule down, it really helps. Even now with like when we have our kids around, because we do a lot of like the work at home too, our rule is if we have the kids around, we're not talking about work. We're talking about them. Will I be in the corner sending an email? Maybe. But we're not talking about it. And I think just really having those boundaries really helped us.
And just so I can get a little bit better of a picture, within Bubbly Paws, what would, do you guys have similar roles or would you say, I do this and Tricia does that?
Do you want the role that she thinks she has or that she has? technically, she's the owner of the company.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like everything always has to go past her, and that's how it should be because she's the one that really has the vision, the design. Here's how I want it to look. She knows what the Bubbly Paws customer is, and she gets that to a T. Like Julie, who's our operations director, and I will brainstorm ideas, and she'll just shoot it out. She's like, "That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard." I'm like, "Well, there we go."
Right.
But she's normally right.
Yeah.
So I mean, everything we do always gets run past her. Whether it's, hey, do you like this franchise owner? Do you like this? Or what do you think? Like we were hiring somebody yesterday. And I'm like, I know you haven't met her. I'm like, this is weird. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, are you okay with this? This is why I think they're a good hire. Mm-hmm. And, on the other hand, she's not as involved with like the day-to-day stuff. Like she handles more of like the retail items. Like, hey, here's what we're going to put in. Here's what, you can't find in the big box stores. So she really has the cute aspect dialed in. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, she's also dealing with our kids all the time. So, I mean, that's also her full-time job. Mm-hmm. So, we try to really juggle all of that, which is why I'm here. You almost had a kid sitting on the couch, by the way. So.
And I realize it's kind of the antithesis of having your own business, but people talk about controlling time. You mentioned not talking about work after 5, but are you guys pretty... Are you able to be really controlled with your time and making sure you have enough time for the kids and vacations and things like that, or do you get swallowed a little with the business?
We struggle sometimes. I mean, I think like any business owner is going to struggle with that. There's always stuff that you can do, but I really try to disconnect. Perfect example, every winter we normally go to Florida for a week. Mm-hmm. And, for 2 reasons. One, let's just get away because it's cold, but it also helps you kind of disconnect. On the other hand, stuff just doesn't stop. Now that we have more of a support staff, I think it really helps. Mm-hmm. But the problem is I love having my hands in everything. And we also hid the fact that we went to Florida for 2 weeks over COVID. So the only person that knew was our general manager and didn't tell anybody. I'm like, you don't need to know. I'm like, we can run this from anywhere.
Right.
And you can. But it's always challenging. Right. There's always something that you can do. We try not to do stuff all the time, but it's hard.
Well, and it's probably just a little different when you're building something that's your own versus, putting 80 hours in for somebody else.
Well, there's there's a sense of loyalty to like our franchise owners too. Like, they've trusted us with, funds to really build their business, mm-hmm. So it's, if something gets delayed or messed up, I don't want it on my shoulders. Right. So it's like I want to make sure that everything goes right too. It's construction. Nothing's ever perfect, but it should be pretty darn close. Right. And some of that stuff is I need to know this answer today because we're putting drywall up tomorrow.
Right.
So I'll scroll the emails, but sometimes you just don't get a response right away.
Okay, cool. And how quickly do you, once the first location is profitable, how quickly do you start to think maybe we should have a second?
We were tossing around doing another doggy daycare in the Twin Cities. And the problem we ran into is, as you know, like the business community here, there's a lot of friends. Mm-hmm. And we didn't want to compete with our friends, which is really weird because there were already great daycares, northeast, southwest of the cities. And why do I want to just build something to compete? Plus, the doggy daycare is a lot of stress. Like, it's not an easy business. Like, you're dealing with people's kids, basically putting them on a playground all day and saying, here, please don't fight, mm-hmm. And then, mm-hmm. Something happened. Okay, so you're literally, with the overnight stuff, it's literally a 24-hour job. And if something happens, it's never Friday at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's always Saturday night around 7 o'clock, and you're going to like an evet. And now I have a hot date with the evet. So
got it. So you have like 3 shifts?
We did. So we had 2 shifts there. But what we did is instead of doing another doggy daycare, then we started looking at other concepts. We're like, we really wanted to focus on the dog wash and grooming side because mm-hmm. nothing like that had really been done in the Minneapolis area at the time. And that's kind of where Bubbly Paws got born from was mm-hmm. there was a need. Customers kept wanting to use the tubs at the daycare to bathe their dogs like after a dog park. So we're like, there's something to this. Let's actually start like exploring it. And like, we traveled around. We went to Denver, did a lot of market research there because it's a lot like Minneapolis, and just quickly learned, here's what we like, here's what we hate. Like they had a lot of functional dog washes, but they put like, a nice tub with like plywood behind it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
Like
plywood smells when it's wet.
Yeah,
So it's a cool concept, very functional, but not cute. So that's what we really tried to pull in the cute factor.
Got it. So up until that point, there's groomers where they're just cutting hair, but you're not taking your dog anywhere just to wash the dog.
And that was it, And even like the grooming side, a lot of times I call it old school grooming, where it's like you drop the dog off, take them into the back room, you pick them up 5 hours later, and magically they're done. Like you never see the whole process, with the exception of like the big box stores. More of the mom and pop groomers, it's always the weird back room that nobody ever sees. So we're like, why can't we just put glass windows in these rooms and just let people see in, and just, here you go, here's what happens. I think it's just more comfortable for everybody.
So is that like you schedule a grooming? Is it almost like your kids getting their hair cut? We're going to come in at 1:30. I'm going to watch you, and then I'll be able to take the dog away?
I mean, if you want to stay there the whole time, we're going to call you crazy, but you can definitely stay.
I'm just curious. Well, because I think of I have a mini golden doodle, and when I bring that dog in to get groomed, I am dragging that dog across the parking lot.
I feel like most of the dogs that come in for grooming aren't wagging their tails. Oh my gosh, this is the best place. This is like going to Disneyland. But on the other hand, hopefully you're not dragging them all in. We try to create more of like a spa-like experience, like where you'd want to get your hair cut. So it's most dogs that come in, okay, cool, I'm here, 2 hours, we're done. Just most of them just kind of stand and put up with it, as opposed to, oh, this is an amazing place. But I think on the other hand, creating the laid-back experience, also helps us keep staff, because you're not dealing with constant barking all day. And I think customers also love it because it is more laid back, structured laid back.
Did you need a business loan? And was that an entirely, had there been a dog washing place to have a reference for the bank? That's what.
Let's just say we use the same small town bank.
Same small town bank.
They loved us at this point.
They got it. They got it figured out. And then how long does it take for like patrons of your establishment to wrap their mind around, I'm going to take my dog somewhere else to get it washed?
So when we opened the first store in 2011, it was 3 miles from our doggy daycare, because in our mind, it's going to be the same customer. So at the doggy daycare, like the average customer was probably 25 and under, 30 and under, living alone, just right out of college, maybe, living with their partner, spouse, whoever. That was doggy daycare. So we're like, oh, same concept, same customer. When we did our grand opening of St. Louis Park, the first 3 people all came in with kids. Well, crap. Now I'm going to Target, I'm buying stools and kid aprons. So it's like we quickly just modified, and we're like, we have to become kid-friendly, because that was never even on our radar. We're like, who would want to bring a kid and wash a dog? But then you're like, oh, wow, this is actually cool for a family. Like, you're killing an hour, you're doing something fun, the kids love it, they get in the tubs. We're like, this is such a whole new world that we didn't even plan on. It was weird. But yeah, it was a very weird grand opening. I'm like, I'm leaving for 20 minutes.
Right. Well, so then eventually, of course, that has to become profitable for you, and probably, as we were talking about before, there's potentially your 9-to-5 job.
Oh, it totally was.
Versus 24 hours.
Right, and that's what we really saw. We saw that it was, your stress level ended at 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock when the store closes, because you're not dealing with the same type of issues. Like at the daycare, you're dealing with, stressed out dogs that might be boarding for, 1 week or 2 weeks sometimes, that might not be eating, kennel cough flying around.
Right, and just so I get a handle on this, in the Twin Cities area, when you start your dog wash, is there any other dog wash?
There was one other one. It was smaller. I mean, they're still around. I think it's a great place, but it was very functional as opposed to cute. It's a great place. Bring your dog in. Here's a raised tub. Not a bad place, just not
like a spa kind of feel.
Right, it didn't have like the spa atmosphere. It was just very functional.
And how long does it take before you feel like, wow, this is going to work, we're making money?
It was almost right away. When we hired our first groomer, I remember, she was booked out for probably like a week. I'm like, wow, like you're booked out a week. Like, this is awesome. And she's doing, 6 or 7 dogs a day. And then we're like, okay, there's actually something here. But we always love to be very conservative when we hired people too. So we're not just going to have 5 groomers standing around waiting, because all 5 of them are standing around not doing anything. So then we added a second groomer. We're like, oh, wow. I'm like, she's booked out too. And then we just kept, I think we had 3 groomers, and we decided, okay, this is working. And that was probably 6 to 8 months in.
And is your primary marketing from the daycare? Is that where most of your clients are coming?
Back then, we did a lot of it with the daycare. Sometimes we did stuff separate. Sometimes we would do it together. But, each kind of hit its own market. Like the daycare we learned online, you can get away with a little bit more because it's a younger audience. So, we were never dirty, but like you could say things differently. Whereas with the dog wash, it was much more, we tried to be very PG. And very family friendly. And, we never wanted to sell. It was always, here's cute dogs in tubs, and
right.
I feel like that's your best marketing, especially now, like on Instagram. That's what we do. Like, you're never going to say, here, buy our new dog bandana, $15, click here.
Right.
That's not us. Like, we just really love just showing pictures of dogs and here's what goes on.
So that works and you're making money and...
So we opened a St. Paul store. Why not?
I was going to say, well, because it sounded like you mentioned you had doggy daycares in different parts of the Twin Cities, but a dog wash, there just was much less competition.
There really wasn't competition. It's like, even, so when we looked at our St. Paul location, we wanted to be in like a cool area, kind of like up and coming or just where people are really going. And, so we were looking at like the Highland Park area. We ended up settling on Grand Avenue, which is a great area. Rent is ridiculous, but great area. And I remember walking through the building like, oh, this is great. It was going to be the Cupcake store that's in the Mall of America that was on Cupcake Wars. And it actually trenched through the whole center of the building, all the plumbing. They actually had a lease there, and the Mall of America bought out their lease. So we got all of the plumbing basically for nothing.
Wow.
St. Paul is great. It's been a fun store.
So how do you decide to franchise, as opposed to owning a number of different places, franchising out? How does that thought process come about?
So we opened the 4 stores, and we're like, okay, what's next? This is all obviously pre-COVID. We're like, we want to do more, but we didn't necessarily want the stress of doing more. And, it's how much can the Twin Cities handle? Maybe 1 or 2 more, but I just don't like to oversaturate either. So then we kind of tossed around the idea of like franchising. I personally hate the word franchising. Like it's not us. So when I think franchise, it's like Jimmy John's, Starbucks,
Sure. Okay.
Pete's Coffee, stuff like that. And it's not us because we want to really be like the mom and pop place. And we had such an issue with that. We contacted a couple of franchise people, and this is like, 2014. And we're like, you know what? This just isn't us. Let's just wait. Then we kind of tabled it for a little while. Then right before COVID hit, we kind of tossed it around again. We're like, this actually could be cool. Like, but not as a franchise. If we're helping other people, it's like because we kept getting contacts from people. Hey, I want to open a dog wash. I want to open a dog wash. Like we helped a guy in France of all like random places. Yeah. So we kept getting all of these contacts. I'm like, well, so do we want to do like a consulting business? I'm like, well, consulting is basically franchising, just without the monthly royalty.
Right.
And we're like, why don't we just franchise it? Like, let's just do it, but let's do it our way, not the way that all of America has been doing it for 20 years. Like, let's just go about it with our own philosophies and do what we want to do. And that's kind of where it all came from. And then COVID hit and we were bored and just finished it off.
For the people, your franchisees, right? What is all their upside for them? What do you take off their plate that they go, absolutely, I can do it with you rather than just coming up with my own name and trying to mirror the same thing?
I think a lot of it's you're buying into a system that's been proven. So it's not just, okay, well, I want to do a dog wash. Well, what tubs do I get? Oh, what type of flooring do I put in? Like, what type of flooring is anti-slip so customers don't fall? Like,
I see.
How often should air exchange in the building? Because that's our biggest nightmare when it comes to grooming is humidity. Especially with like your doodle, the hotter it is in the building, the longer it takes to dry. Stuff that people just would never, right.
Right.
See, now you know.
All the technical stuff, yeah.
In the summer, it might take a little longer. Surprise.
How long did it take you guys to sort through that?
Walk into our St. Louis Park store and I will show you everything we did wrong. It's one of those, we think we knew what we were doing when we built it. Like, okay, here's how we want to do it. Here's the little things, nothing that an average customer would ever notice. And some stuff we've actually modified after the fact. But like our St. Paul store, which is our second store, we're like, okay, here's everything that we wanted to change. And then by the time we did our Maple Grove one, which is the third one, we're like, okay, this is our model. We love this. So it really took 2 stores to figure things out. And it's just as subtle as the floor or just, what type of soundproofing do you put in? Because our one store is next to an acupuncturist. And trust me, you don't want to hear a dog bark when you're getting a needle in you.
Right.
So it's like, how much soundproofing do you have to put in? Because soundproofing isn't cheap. But yet you don't want to go well, especially for podcasting, it's not cheap.
Right, for sure.
Picture trying to put it for dogs. And, at the same St. Louis Park store, we have an acupuncturist on one side. We have $1 million condos above us. Yeah. And when we signed the lease, they're like, we better not hear a dog bark. Right. I'm like, oh, okay, now it just got real.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously the sound stuff, I mean, if you can't get that right, you really limit the space of where you can be.
Right, and they're dogs. They're going to bark. So it's how do we not become the obnoxious neighbor?
Right.
And then one of the things we also did, pre-franchising is we opened a store in Idaho. It was an existing dog wash that was for sale that we purchased. Knew the owner. We actually helped her open that store. So we knew her very well. COVID hit and it just, everybody just gets scared of COVID. And, she closed down the dog wash. They did like curbside drop-off pickup. Keep in mind, this is Idaho where COVID really didn't exist.
Right.
So she's like, you know what? I just want out. She's like, I'm just not into the dog thing anymore. I just want to move on. And she's like, would you want to purchase it? Would you want to do something? So we ended up just buying it and flipping it to us. Mm-hmm. And to us, it was more of a test of how do we support people outside of Minnesota? Because if we're supporting franchise owners, we better have that system down.
As far as vetting franchise owners, is there a particular process that you had? Like, for example, I don't know, when in my line of work, they do personality tests, right? And to determine if you're a type A and you're a go-getter or any of that kind of stuff. Is there any kind of formalized testing or surveys or anything that people have to do to be a franchise owner?
Do you want the real answer? Is we just use Instagram or like we use Facebook, we use social media, LinkedIn. But on top of that, our sales guy's super into these tests. Like he's like, this person's a blue, this person's a red. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I'm like, I didn't read this stupid book. I'm like, can you give me a code of these colors? I'm like, I still don't get what like a banging drummer means or like whatever these like terms are. I'm like, when we meet somebody, you really just get to know them. And that's what I really look for. But also, you can tell so much from their social media.
For location of franchises now, you don't actually care where the location is, right?
We like warm weather, especially when it's -20 in Minnesota.
Right.
No, I mean, it's not so much, I don't really care where you are. I mean, we obviously look at like the cities. Like if you're going to do like small town Iowa, we pull the research. Hey, can it handle this? Okay, maybe small town Iowa doesn't handle it, but can we go to like a Des Moines or like a Waterloo or just somewhere a little bit bigger? And that's what we care about. But we also care more about the franchise owner that's buying in. Are they passionate? Do they care about the business? Are they into it for the right reasons? Like we turned down a family in California that wanted to do 20 stores, literally in the whole bottom half of the state. And yeah, it was like one of the first people we talked to in the beginning. And I remember sitting on there with our sales guys saying, yeah, I don't like them.
Yeah.
And like this is somebody that's going to, write a check for over $1 million to us that wants to do it. And his commission would have been great too.
Right.
And I'm like, you know what? They're just not into it. I'm like, they're going to get a call on a Saturday afternoon that something happened or one of their employees is sick. They're going to be on the golf course and not care.
Yeah, if you want a mom and pop feel, it's not going to happen with.
Well, I mean, we also tried talking them into 3 stores. We're like, can we just try 3 and make sure that actually works? That we actually have a system down because we're going from 0 to 20 stores. That's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Like we're going to screw that up. Let's do 2. Can we try that? And not keeping in mind, California is the hardest place to build in too, with every regulation.
Sure.
And why start with that? Let's start easier.
Right. Right. Got it.
They were also very upset that we said no. So,
got it. So, what do you think through this process of starting your own businesses and the growth and expansion of everything? What's been the greatest learning experience for you?
I think a lot of it's learning how to be patient and just letting things happen. I'm a big fan of, I want this done right now. That's how it always used to be. But being patient, letting things happen, but also really taking care of your employees. Like our groomers are the perfect example. Like here in Minneapolis, we've got about 25 groomers, and they're all great. None of them have a non-compete. They could literally walk out of our store right now and go across the street and groom. I feel like it's our job to keep them. And as an employer, that's what you need to do. But you also need to like listen to them. What do they want? We're dealing with mostly millennials that want to have a voice.
We're going to take a break here. And when we come back, I want to ask you a little bit more about your management style with younger employees. Hey there, this is Joe. You know me as the host of this podcast, but did you know that I'm also the co-founder and president of Moxie Wealth Management, a boutique wealth management firm in Minneapolis, Minnesota? My team and I excel at taking complex family and business planning concepts and making our financial advice easy to understand. We recognize the trust that executives and families place in our team and value our role in helping our clients be intentional with their assets. When you partner with Moxie, my team and I focus on creating a plan that encompasses your financial goals and philanthropy, while also understanding how you want your wealth to impact your family and future generations. You can trust our unique expertise to build a thoughtful yet strategic wealth and legacy plan for your future. To learn more about me and my firm, send me an email at joe@moxiewealth.com. That's joe@moxie wealth.com. I'm a registered representative and investment advisor representative of Securian Financial Services, Inc. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Securian Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. North Star Resource Group is independently owned and operated. Moxie Wealth Management is affiliated with North Star Resource Group. I realize, now in my own business, if you don't have a hybrid working model where people can work from home half the time and maybe at work half the time, and maybe there's a different feeling of for millennials of, am I building a career or am I able to be an influencer and just work from home? Or those kind of things.
Everybody's an influencer.
Everybody's an influencer. So what are some of the different methods you utilize to manage younger employees?
We can't do work from home. You can't groom a dog out of a house and be like, okay, well, here, drop your dog off here. Oh, here's the Bubbly Paws, basement grooming experience.
Right.
You actually have to have the brick and mortar. So a lot of it, we really try to listen to people. And I think that's really what it is. And rather than just saying, hi, you're a front desk representative, you're a guest services person. And even beyond that, we do happiness surveys twice a year with our staff. What are we doing right? I don't really care. What can we work on? And that's what really, when we do reviews or these surveys, that's what I really want to know. It's all anonymous. And we had one girl that was in St. Paul, and I remember this was 3 years ago, and she was just so dead set on that we weren't recycling. We weren't recycling because the landlord didn't have a recycling bin. No fault of us. But on the other hand, we didn't ever really ask for it. Never really thought it was a big deal. We don't have a lot of garbage. It's mostly dog hair. And she was just so irate that we weren't recycling. I'm like, okay, cool. Here we go. Now we're going to recycle, but you're also the queen of recycling. So we gave her that task of running the recycling program for the store. And, our front desk staff, if we keep them for a year, that's great. It's you're in college, you're right out of college, that's who works our front desk. Okay. And they want something that they can put on their LinkedIn or on their resume that they didn't just answer the phone and show people how to do baths. You need to give them more. So we have another one that handles a lot of our online marketing. We have one of our managers in St. Louis Park that is going full-time to school for graphic design. So she did a lot of some of our spring and summer dog bandanas. So really trying to bring them into the business too, rather than just saying, here, sit at the desk, answer the phone. So,
right. When you started your business and left, how hard was it to actually make that first decision to say, all right, I'm going to figure this out, I'm going to quit? Is it a matter of, if we can get a business loan, we're going to let it roll, and if it fails, it's fine if it fails, we'll go do something else? Or
I think when we were looking at it, we never even thought it would fail. That was the hard. It's probably us just being stupid and 25 or 26 and just saying, probably 30 actually, but
yeah,
we never actually thought that it would actually fail. And I think our first business loan for the doggy daycare, I want to say it was $100,000, which now doesn't sound like a lot, but in 2008. That's a ton of money. I've never seen that.
We are. What I'm interested in the timing of that. 2008 is during the financial crisis.
Oh, it totally is. Why not open a service fluff business during a recession?
Right. Right.
It was one of those. I would drive to the daycare. I'm like, the gas price just went up again. I'm like, what's the first thing to go is doggy daycare, because if you're watching your expenses, every extra is going to go away. Well, doggy daycare is the easiest because it's the most expensive.
Right.
On the other hand, I think when we had the doggy daycare, we pulled a lot of our customers from Target, General Mills, the big, Best Buy, the big corporations here, and they're working longer hours. So now you're working longer hours and you have a crazy puppy.
Right.
And the last thing you want to do is go for a run when you get home, or you just want to sit on the couch rather than play with your dog for 2 hours to tire them out because they've been in a cage all day. So I think that's why that actually worked.
And I was just thinking, kind of circling back to that business, how did the pandemic affect that? Did it?
Oh, it was awful.
It was awful.
I mean-
Because part of me was thinking, I work from home now. I'm kind of not home. I'm hybrid. So a couple days a week for sure I'm at home. My dog wants to go out 10 times a day.
Right.
Because I'm there. I would think about bringing my dog into a daycare just so I could do work.
It's funny, the dog wash, the Bubbly Paws really bounced back a lot faster.
Okay.
Meaning when the state told us we could open, it was back to normal, basically. I mean, with obviously our restrictions, but the daycare, it was rough. Because, half of our business, or actually really the money side of doggy daycare is boarding. Because if you think about it, people are paying to leave their dog overnight. Mm-hmm. You don't have to do anything. So, boarding is basically pure profit. Well, nobody's traveling. So,
oh, yeah.
I think we reopened. We had 2 dogs boarding. I'm like, wow, this is sad. This is weird. And I think we had 10 dogs for doggy daycare. And this is back, when almost before the PPP loans came out. And we made the promise to our staff, hey, we're going to keep you because you've obviously worked hard with us. I don't know how we're going to keep you, but we're going to keep you. And we're going to figure this out. And it worked out, but, it was the daycare, I think, took about 9 to 10 months to actually get back to somewhat normal. Keeping in mind, the biggest cost is staffing. So you start cutting staff because you don't have dogs. Well, that's not fair to them. It's not their fault stuff's going on.
Right.
So we kind of pivoted. We put a couple of them at the dog wash. We kind of moved people around too.
Okay.
Fast forward to the state, we weren't essential at the time. So we had to be closed.
Yeah.
And it was one of those, we knew we could do it right. We knew we could do grooming safely. And we actually fought the state with other groomers to become an essential business because thanks to our council person or our state representative here.
Fantastic, yeah.
She also fought for a couple other people. But
hopefully she's still there.
Oh, she gets my vote every year.
Yeah, right.
Not to get political, but
yeah.
She messaged us. She's like, I want to take this on. And she's like, you guys can do this. It's a dog in a room. Hey, let's do curbside drop-off. How can we do it? But even harder, it's how do you make your staff feel comfortable? Because keep in mind, my level of freak out isn't your level of freak out or their level. Everybody's got different levels that they're on. And I remember we did a Zoom call with all of our groomers, 2 days before we were going to reopen. We're like, okay, how are you? Let's just talk about here's what we're changing, here's how we're doing things. And our one groomer was under his kitchen sink changing his garbage disposal on camera. I'm like, you know what? This is so cool because you just lightened the mood. So I would just check him like, you cool with that disposal? He clearly could care less.
Right.
He's like, I just want to come back. I just want to work. I don't really care. He's like, and I got to fix my disposal.
Were people concerned at the time that the disease could be transferred from people to dogs to people?
Oh, we had every level of concern. We had one groomer that would wear a full-on gas mask with the respirators on the side.
Oh, man.
To one of our other groomers that you couldn't get to put a mask on. And, it was every store had its own feel. Every groomer had its own feel. And it's just I never went to school on how to train and deal with this. I'm like, and we've got a new baby. I really don't want to think about this.
My hope is that someday we're telling another generation of, let me tell you this crazy 2 years that we had. Hopefully we don't have anything like that for a long time in the future. But,
right.
But who knows?
I think we're okay. So far we're good right now. But let's just knock on some wood.
Well, so for this podcast, we always talk about success and how people define success. How would you go about defining success?
I think so many people want to define it as money, and that's not us. I look at it more as I want to define it as happiness. It's so when I wake up in the morning, are we happy doing what I'm doing? Am I happy dealing with our Charlotte store that can't find a stupid meter box for their electric meter for their construction build out, which, side note, those are, of course, supply chain issues, and nobody has those boxes. Mm-hmm. Or, do I want to deal with our couple in California that are looking for spaces? Does that make me happy? And I feel like that's success. And, have we helped others? Have we actually paid it forward? Do we, are our employees happy? To me, that all comes together. It's not a monetary thing because that's cool, but that doesn't make you happy. And I really love just making sure that we're taking care of others and, just getting up every day. Hey, I was up at 4:30 today doing emails. I'm like, you know what? Old school Keith would hate this, but I'm like, you know what? I actually love this. This is a great time. And just sending stuff like that made me happy.
Somebody asked me an interesting question the other day, and I'm curious about if you agree or disagree with this thesis. And he asked, in the last year, on a scale of 1 to 10, how successful or how great was the year, right? And I gave my answer to him, and he was talking about another relative of his who said it was a 10, right? And he said, okay, 10. But I know that you had really difficulty with your job, you had health issues, you had whatever, and he was just fine. The theory I'm wondering about is, if you're a heavy goal-oriented person, is there ever a 10?
Even when we do our employee reviews, we base it on a scale of 1 to 5. And we go into the review saying, you're never going to get a 1, you're never going to get a 5. Because nothing is ever perfect. Nothing's ever a 1. I mean, except if you're reading Google reviews. It's either 1 or 5. But
right.
There's nothing in the middle.
Right.
But that's how we kind of go through with things. I think you're never going to be a 10. You're never going to be a 1. I love being just a 7.
Is there anything you would have done differently so far in the first 10 or 11 years with Bubbly Paws?
It's a really good question. In the beginning, I think we would have asked for customer feedback sooner. Because a lot of it, we would go in knowing, we think we have this, but we don't. We're learning stuff, even now, we'll still look at stores and be like, oh, why do we do that? Why do we do that? But we could have saved a lot of money if we asked customers in the beginning of just standing by the tub. What do you think? Is the water hot enough? Is the water, is the pressure enough? Is it, is it cold enough in here? Our dryers are the perfect example. We have to educate people on our dog dryers because everybody assumes it's like a hair dryer, with hot, warm air coming through it. Well, in the dog world, they don't even make heated dryers for dogs. So it's always room temperature because a dog's temperature is about 10 degrees higher than ours, and you really don't want to burn them, which it's just the education factor on that one. And, just putting a simple sign there saying these aren't heated and here's why they're not heated would have fixed the problem about 40 reviews earlier. But
so you had
hop on Google for that one.
Yeah, so you had owners saying, but the dryer wasn't hot. What's going on?
Keep in mind, we're in Minnesota. People are passive aggressive. They'll never actually say it to your face. So,
right. So when you look at the vision for you and Bubbly Paws, and maybe you and your wife and the family, what's your vision moving forward?
So when we started franchising, our goal for the first year was really to have 3 franchise owners. And somehow we ended up with 10. And that surprised us. It also made us super nervous because we're like, well, we thought about 3. Now we have 10 stores. And, that's cool. Obviously, we want to keep growing the brand. But we also want to grow it very safely and very conservatively. We don't want to just, here's 200 stores next year. That's not us. We still want to keep true to our small roots and know where we came from. We just hired our first 2 corporate employees, which was weird. I'm like, we've always promoted people. This is weird. I now have a construction person. I now have, a financial person that can talk to people about numbers. I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
But it was weird doing that because I'm like, we've never needed that. And, even as we grow, we don't want to lose touch with that. We look at more of, great that you know numbers, but how well do you fit into our mold?
Is it a deep drill on the dog washing, or is there another aspect of pet something that is in your brain for another venture?
If you take this idea, you can go do it.
All right.
We just don't have the time. I really want to do a all-in-one dog park. I think it would be so cool. I mean, there's places that have been doing it. Nobody's ever done it in the Twin Cities the right way. So I'm talking indoor, outdoor, all fake grass on the inside, awesome fake grass dog park on the outside, throw a brewery on it, throw a restaurant, but just make it really cool, heat it outside so that, in the cold winter, you can stand outside, you can, have a picnic table with food. No snow, just somewhat heat lamps. But, something like that I think would really take off. I mean, there's some concepts like that, but never really the upscale model of, most of the places will put just concrete floors on the inside. That's cool, but dogs slide. Let's actually protect it a little bit and do the fake grass, have it flush out everything under it, and just the West Coast loves that idea.
They do.
Just hasn't moved here yet, but there's something there.
Well, I think we're going to leave it there.
I love it.
I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate you sharing. I love your story is awesome. I think it's great.
I think we just have a lot of fun with stuff. You know, I mean, we're dealing with dogs. You can't take it. I mean, it's serious. It's a business, but it's also so much fun.
You've been listening to Keith Miller, founder of Bubbly Paws. You can learn more about Bubbly Paws and their locations and services at bubblypaws.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ascent Podcast, a show about inspiring people who explain their path to achievement. I'm your host, Joe Burgess, wealth advisor and founding partner of Moxie Wealth Management. You can learn more about me and my firm at moxiewealthmanagement.com. That's MOXIE wealthmanagement.com. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.